Good morning, everyone. My name is Christy Howell, and I'm joining you today from my home office with the capable support of my cats, Dobby and Tibby. Tibby's pictured here as the cat who doesn't get social distancing. My colleague Crystal Antone is our office's undisputed champion and expert on all things material recovery. And she's pictured here with two of her pets, her dog Zero and her cat Daisy. Both of us are happy to correspond with you about any questions you might have regarding recycling and composting here at JCCC, student employment in this work, or how wonderful our pets are. Our contact information is here, and we look forward to hearing from you. Okay, you got a lot to cover, and here's an overview of what to expect today. So this is a shortened version of a much longer lecture that we offer on the global recycling economy. So today we're only going to touch on a couple of high points. First, we'll introduce you to materials recovery and reuse here at JCCC. In this process, we'll describe some of the biggest problems we deal with on campus. Next, we're going to explain what happens when it leaves our campus bins. That should give you a good idea too of what happens with materials when they leave your home bins as well. Then we'll talk through some of the kinds of recycling problems we see on campus and give you some tools to avoid them. The processes, problems, and solutions that you see here may or may not apply in your home recycling situations. If you're experiencing an issue there and you have questions about who to contact, start with your materials handler. But if you get stuck, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to help you figure out who to talk with. One other thing I'll mention here is I've cut quite a bit out of this presentation to keep its time reasonable. Since we're off campus right now, for instance, we won't talk about global recycling, the commodities market, or paper towel composting and campus restrooms. I'm happy to help you understand those issues and to expand on them on those with you via email. But in the interest of time, I'm going to try to keep today's conversation focused on practices that apply across our broader community with some big examples of how they work taken from things that we do on campus. So let's get started with a couple of definitions. Some of the terms that I use today may be familiar, but you may not be used to hearing them in this way. So take a minute to either read closely or pay really close attention to the transcript on what these particular items say. And I'm also going to include the precise language from this in an email to your faculty members so they can have it. Thing to remember here is that we are working to create a circular economy. Our current waste stream is a linear system that we define in shorthand as take, make, dispose. Raw materials of production, and then we produce the items, and then they go to the landfill as waste. The current system's wasteful and inefficient because we aren't taking advantage of useful materials at the end of that cycle over here. A more efficient system would waste less in production. It would focus more on reuse at the consumer stage of the process, and it would be more cyclical. This points to the first big idea I'd like you to take away from today. For zero waste systems to work, the material at the end of a cycle has to be destined for a use which is as valued as it was at the very beginning of the cycle that produced it. Let's take a look at the system in practice. At JCCC, we call it our Zero Waste to Landfill initiative, and Crystal is our Zero Waste Coordinator, manages it. There are lots of moving parts, and we'll dive into the one that's probably the easiest for you to see when you're on campus, and that's recycling. Here at JCCC, recycling has been a huge part of our operations for decades. Starting in the 90s, we began giving our recycling revenue back to student scholarships. That was an effort that was started by Phi Theta Kappa, the honor society on campus. What kinds of items do we recycle here? We recycle all the things you'd think of. Items that go in the blue bins, for instance, 1 through 7 plastics, cardboard, paper, and aluminum. We also have a lot of specialty streams, office paper, materials directly from our print shop, and we make sure that that waste stream is as clean as it can be. These other kinds of waste that you see listed here, books, glass, electronics, and materials and metals are all separated out from our single stream as well. And this is important because it's important to understand that the more uniform and free from contamination your material is when it goes to the handler, the better. Contamination, whether it's from other kinds of recyclable materials or things that should be in landfill or from food or whatever, cheapens the price that you're likely to get per load of material. This has been a problem lately. Um, it's one of the many things that's wrong with recycling right now. These problems didn't start overnight, and lots of them we have control over. So people wish cycle, that's the biggest one. How many times have you thought to yourself, I'm not sure if this is recycling, but I'm going to put it in the blue bin and hope somebody will sort it out for me later? That's wish cycling. Don't do that. It happens a lot, but what happens when the folks do that more often than not is that you're just introducing trash into your recycling stream. Around a quarter of what JCCC's contractor gets from campus is trash. And when you send poorly sorted materials to your handler, you end up with poor quality products. So remember at the very beginning, I mentioned that the materials at the end of the cycle have to have a high value. That's where this comes into play. We also have problems with creating demand. So we need to do better at buying recycled content materials. We also need to limit our consumption of single-use products. Americans buy a lot of those. And then last but never least, it's important to keep in mind that we only recycle currently around 35% of the recyclable materials we dispose of. So being a smarter recycler is really, really important too. I'm going to skip ahead and I want to make sure that I can show you what our visual recycling guides look like on campus and the ways that we work to communicate all of this information. So on campus, you can see here, going into the bin, we can accept cardboard, paper, plastic, bottles, and cans. Things we can't take in any blue bin on campus, and this is also going to be true of your home recycling handlers. If you live in the Kansas City area, are plastic bags, styrofoam, glass, or anything with food or liquid still in it. Needs to be empty, not clean, but empty. On the left side of this graphic, you can also see our most frequent contaminants: food wrappers, paper or styrofoam, cups, and straws. So all of these food wrappers are going to have some sort of metal lining. So this is considered a mixed material. Same goes for the paper hot cups. They have a silicone lining that makes them heat safe, so they're considered a mixed material. Don't put those in any regional bin in the Kansas City area. This rule may be different if you go somewhere else, but here in Kansas City, you can't do it. On the right side here, you can also see some specialty recycling streams. And that's going to include small electronics, glass bottles, and those plastics. Those can all go in these large bins. We call them our zero waste stations. Recyclespot.org is going to be the place for you to go if you have questions about regional recycling practices. Make sure that you take advantage of their website, recyclespot.org. I want to skip ahead and give you an idea of what's next for recycling at JCCC. We have a new materials management plan that's in the works. Ideally, that will help us get to zero waste to landfill by 2025. We're on track for that now. We encourage 4 R's, right? Both for campus consideration and for folks doing this work at home. Always rethink, is there a way to not buy this or to not take one of these? And question yourself if you can handle the need for a new item in a more sustainable and responsible way. Reduce your waste by working with companies that take back recycling programs and pressure vendors to reduce packaging or to provide greener options. On campus, we work to use surplus items more effectively, and we're implementing improved methods for construction and demolition recycling, as well as new bagless recycling options. So this is a really, really short overview for all of the things that we usually talk about in this conversation. And I apologize. I have so much more to tell you. So I ask that if you have any questions, please do reach out and talk with us. Remember that you have an important role in changing the way that we buy materials. Seek out recycled content and the way that we dispose of them. So don't wish cycle. Don't forget that we have paid internships, campus leadership, and volunteer opportunities on campus. If you have questions about any of the content that we've covered here today, any of the content that I've alluded to, or anything else, random recycling questions are our favorites. Drop us a line at recycle@jccc.edu. Talk to you soon.